Okay, so good morning to everyone. And again, welcome to the 2022-2023 follow-up report training. My name is Dewana McCreary, and I will be your presenter for today's training, or at least one of your presenters. This morning, we have a presentation from OCTE, and we're going to get started with that first. Just give me 1 second to turn over permissions. Okay, so we have Enching Ye from OCTE. And Enching, I believe you can speak now. I believe your microphone should be on.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfect. Good morning.
Morning. So you're gonna share the presentation slide for me?
Yes.
Okay. So thank you, everyone. I think now it is time to begin our follow-up process for the fall of 2022. So agencies that receive the state reimbursement for career and technical education programs for the Perkins funds are required to conduct the annual career and technical education follow-up survey. The information gathered through the follow-up survey going to provide data that is used for the state and the federal reporting requirements. So through your efforts, the data gathered is a reliable source for information about students who concentrated in CTE programs. Next slide, please. So the main purpose, like I mentioned, of the follow-up survey is to collect one of the Perkins core performance indicator, the 3S1 post-program placement. So this indicator is focused on the CTE concentrators who exited during the reporting year and were in place the second quarter after they exiting high school in the following categories. So since our 3S1 denominator is all CTE concentrators who left school and responded to the follow-up survey, so high response rate of the follow-up survey is critical to ensure that the respondents of the follow-up survey can sufficiently represent all of our CTE concentrators who left school. So the survey data can be used in variety of ways at both the federal and the state levels. So at the federal level, OC, the Office of Career and Technical Education from Department of the U.S. Education, going to use the data to show the impact of CTE funding to the U.S. Legislature. So this may affect future federal funding. And similarly, MDE going to use the data to show the impact of state funding of CTE programs to the Michigan legislature. And additional data uses by the state could include, we're going to use the data from the follow-up survey to make our ranking programs to allocate the ended cost funding, and also program review consideration of the data in answering questions such as are CTE concentrators funding jobs or continuing their training in a related field that you could use to evaluate your local programs. Next slide, please. So as you can see, here shows our last year and the year before and the year prior to last, the overall information that we collected through the follow-up survey. So as you can see, our response rate has lowered a little bit, like about 3% point compared to the prior year. However, our proxy rate has also decreased, which is also the way we want. And I appreciate all your efforts to make this happen. And then the overall placement rate employed and the continuing education, we have all increased a little bit. Next slide, please. Yeah, I think here I just want to highlight the importance of the response rate. First, we already know that how important the response rate to the quality of the post-program placement indicator. And according to Perkins 5, which requires states to report the post-program placement of all CTE concentrators. So this means that we need to make a good faith effort to survey all qualified concentrators, as well as a good response rate to accurately portray all concentrators in the state. And the value of the data collected through the follow-up survey depends on an accurate report of the status of all concentrators. A good response rate is necessary to accurately portray all concentrators in the state. And also from our previous verification studies has shown that districts with low response rate often underreport their placement rate because they fail to reach the students who were employed during the regular weekdays. Next slide, please. So this is our response rate requirement. I think this did not change from previous years because a low response rate can negatively affect buildings, CPEs, and the state by reducing the accuracy of the placement information that will be used to evaluate CTE programs. So we have kind of two requirements. The institutions and the regions with response rate below 80% may be found to be in compliance during a track on-site monitoring visit. And I think a response rate below 80% are going to also use to identify in our risk analysis for the track on-site monitoring. And district with one or more buildings with response rates below 50% will be required to send a representative to a technical assistance workshop before next follow-up survey to make sure that they notify the importance of the response rate for the follow-up survey and make sure they know how to appropriate report the follow-up data. Next slide, please. So there are a few tips I listed here, which you can find on the page 9 in the protocol menu. So for example, the time to make the calls going to be important. That your follow-up interviews attempt to reach students in the evenings or on weekends may be easier to reach out to students. And I also want to mention that we also have a follow-up survey best practices on the CTEIS knowledge base webpage as well. So where you can find some tips and some best practice from both teacher and ISD, which can give you an idea. So all this information is collected last year through a survey as well as a focus group from the CPEs or ISD who are doing a very good job on the follow-up survey. So you can find those. Next slide, please. And here is a proxy rate requirement. So this is new starting from last year. So we require that buildings with proxy rate higher than 20% will be required to attend a follow-up training before next follow-up survey. And the proxy rate for the track risk analysis and compliance finding will be reduced as well. So for the track risk analysis, regions that have one or more buildings with a proxy rate greater than 20% will be flagged on the risk analysis. And for the track on-site visiting, the regions have a regional proxy rate greater than 20% will receive the finding of non-compliance and be required to prepare a compliance plan. So we have ended this new requirement, has lowered our owed like 30% of the proxy rate to 20% due to main findings from last year's verification study, which shows that proxy respondents are less accurate than the students themselves responses. So hopefully we wish this can push our respondents more accurate and valid. And like I showed in previous slides, our overall state proxy rate has lowered a lot from, I think, 21% to 12%. So I'm appreciate that all your effort to make this happen and make sure our data is more accurate. Next slide, please. So here I just want to highlight again for the use of our follow-up protocol manual. So this manual can be found on our CTEIS knowledge base page under the data entry follow-up. So this protocol manual, I know it is long. But I hope everyone who is doing the follow-up survey this year can go through it with your group, because this protocol manual has provided the overall requirement and also the guidance on how to get the survey items one by one, and also explains the background and purpose of the follow-up survey. So it provides you a lot of details as much as we can. So I hope you can make good use of the protocol manual. Next slide. So here is my contact information. So except for any like a technical assistant, if you have any question about the survey, the requirement, or anything else, you just feel free to contact me. I'm happy to help you. So overall, I want to thank you all again, and I hope we will all do a good job for the follow-up this school year. So thank you all.
Thank you very much for that presentation. Again, all of the information can be found on our knowledge base, and I'll show that in just a moment. Okay, so this is the information that we were referring to. So this is our knowledge base, support.ctis.com. If you hover over data entry and scroll down to follow-up, this is our follow-up page. All of the documentation that we will go over today is found here on this page, as well as the PowerPoint slides that we just viewed from OCTE. If you want to review those are here, as well as the PowerPoint slides that I will be using a little bit going into this presentation. So if you would like to, if you haven't gotten your follow-up packet already or you haven't downloaded it, you can use this page to follow along with the material for today, the instructional guide, the protocol manual, the scripts. We're going to go through all of the scripts and some of the other materials. So you can use this site to get your materials for today's training. So I'm going to go back to our presentation. And now we're back. We are going to go forward. Again, my name is Dewana McCrary, and I am the trainer for today's session. Also in the session today from PTD, you will see Diana Terry, who is our scheduler. She may answer questions in the chat and provide assistance and technical assistance with our training today. So she's also in the training. If you have questions or you would like for me to review material as we're going through our training, please feel free to drop your questions in the chat. Just an overview of who PTD is. PTD Technology is the vendor partnering with the Office of Career and Technical Education, also OCTE, to provide you with CTEIS, Career and Technical Information System. CTEIS is the tool you will use to complete your follow-up reports in addition to other CTE data collections. So the purposes and uses, as we heard for the follow-up report, is one of several seasonal reports required by the Office of Career and Technical Education. To prepare this report, you will need to survey students who became concentrators and left school. These concentrators will have completed at least 8 segments of a wage-earning CTE program. The feedback you collect will allow officials to determine how these students' CTE skills are serving them in their post-secondary careers. The information gathered from these interviews affects a variety of reports, both at the local and state levels. The data you collect will help coordinators place students in CTE programs and can facilitate program improvements. Those who study this data can determine the number of CTE concentrators who find work or continue their education in a related field, which indicates placement rate on the Perkins Core Performance Report. It is also noted that submitting your follow-up report on time can also help ensure that your programs receive state added cost funds. Our next slide is a follow-up timeline. The official start of the follow-up timeline began on October 11th, which was our official first training. The follow-up packet have been sent out, and you should have it. Or again, it can be found on our CTEIS knowledge base that I just showed at support.ctis.com. If you need any assistance with finding those or you did not receive your packet, please contact the help desk, and I'll give that information in just a moment. Local district began contacting and collecting the survey in October, and you're going to be collecting until January. So you're going to begin in October, and it runs through January. Each building must have all their survey completed and submitted to their CPID administrators by January 5th, 2023, and then to OCTE by January 12th, 2023. After all districts have turned in their survey reports, we can begin to create the follow-up reports. The X0610, the X0611, and the T1608 results are generally posted on the CTEIS website during the spring of the project cycle. Local personnel and superintendents are usually notified of the publications in April, but that can also depend on when the data is collected. So just keep that in mind. Okay, we're going to move to our next slide. The follow-up. So this is the process. To collect the data required for the follow-up report, CTEIS concentrators who participated in wage earning programs and who have left school will take a brief survey that relates their current experiences to their CTE training. Teachers or other district officials conduct the survey of these former students according to a list that CTEIS provides. Telephone surveys generally have the highest success rates, but you may send mail surveys if time and your budget allows. Once you gather the information from every concentrator on your list, the data is compiled into electronic form through the CTEIS application and submitted to the fiscal agency authorized officials and then to the CPID administrators for review. And then it is finally delivered to the state officials at the Office of Career and Technical Education. Okay, we're going to move to our next slide. Support services. This slide details our support services. OCTE provides a Survey Support Center, or SSC, to monitor the follow-up survey and assist you as you complete your report. The Survey Support Center is run by PTD Technology in East Lansing and provides many services, including developing the CTEIS application used for the follow-up submission, offering advice conducting an efficient and accurate survey, answering questions related to follow-up survey forms, solving problems that may occur during your follow-up reporting process. We provide training, and we design the follow-up materials. Also, we keep and make sure that all documents are current. So as I stated, help is available as you're going through your process. The CTEIS network is very broad, but if you have any technical questions regarding your follow-up survey, such as how to use your survey forms, how to collect data from your concentrators on your list, how to operate the CTEIS application, do not hesitate to contact PTD Technology. We have our phone number there, our toll-free number, the 800 number, or you can contact by email. And this is regarding technical assistance. As stated earlier, policy help, if you have direct questions about policy, you need to contact OCTE, and the information is available there, as well as the slides that were presented earlier. Okay, now we're going to go into our process of the training for the actual follow-up report. Your follow-up reporting procedure has been simplified into a series of steps. By using the CTEIS application and following the step-by-step process, you can ensure that you won't overlook any of the elements required to complete your reports. Step 1 is to review your follow-up packet. As I stated, that information is available if you haven't received it already on the support.cteis.com site. If you have it, when you receive your packet, take a few moments to familiarize yourself with the items contained. You should find 2 memos, one from OCTE and the other from the Survey Support Center. These memos introduce the follow-up project, cover the state's reporting goals, and announce the submission deadlines for the new year. The next item you will find is a workshop schedule. The schedule includes information concerning training dates and what materials you should bring to the training. The next item is the protocol manual. The protocol manual guides a reporter through the survey process. It explains the reasoning behind each survey question, describes how to properly ask survey questions, and efficiently fill out survey forms. It also offers other suggestions for handling difficult calls while improving the number of students that you contact. The next item is your instructional guide. This user guide covers logging into, navigating, and inputting survey data into the CTEIS application. This instructional guide contains the follow-up timelines as well as help desk contact information at the Survey Support Center, and it also covers the finalization and submission of your follow-up report. The next sections in step 1 is your intro script. The intro script is the form you will use to begin each of your surveys. It contains a dialogue script that quickly introduces you, identifies the students and their programs, and determines whether you will conduct a student or a proxy survey. The next section is the surveys. The very first one is the student survey. The student survey form is a traditional method of gathering information from your concentrators. You will complete this form if you are interviewing a student directly. The next form is the proxy survey. This survey is a variation of the student survey. The question on the proxy surveys are altered slightly so that your proxies may answer questions on your student's behalf. The last survey is the mail survey. And this survey may assist in gathering data as well, though we stated that the phone surveys generally demonstrate a much higher rate of success. The mail survey is mailed to your students who then complete the forms themselves and then send them back to you. And we do have a question in the chat regarding due dates. Are the due dates on one of the memos going to be corrected? It was noticed that the due dates on the 2 memos did not match. Yes, there should be a correction out on the memos. The corrected memo is on the knowledge base as well, if you didn't receive that last email, but those were corrected. The next question in the chat, will there be an option for online again? Yes, the student survey, we're going to get to that in just a moment. Self-survey, the student self-survey. And we're going to, as we stated, the PDFs are online at the CTEIS knowledge base, support.cteis.com. You can also use the links to get these intro scripts and surveys by clicking the links on the CTEIS homepage as well. An additional note is to watch the CTEIS listserv for additional information. As it was stated in the chat, the emails and the information regarding updates is transferred through email. So if you have not signed up for a listserv or to be contacted through the listserv, please contact Jackie Martinez. And her information is on this slide, her email, and request to be added to the listserv to be updated on all information pertaining to the CTEIS applications. So once you have your information, this slide goes over how to log into the CTEIS application. So to input any follow-up data, you must have access to CTEIS. Make sure that you have a My Login for third-party account. If you have a My Login and cannot access the CTEIS application, please see your fiscal agency authorized official to make sure you have the permissions. But if you haven't signed up, there is information on the knowledge base to show you how to sign up if you still need to do that. And today we will be doing a demonstration of the materials that we will put into for our follow-up, and that's the train.cteis.com site. I will let you know when we're switching over to that screen, but it will allow you to practice some of the processes that we will go through today. And you will have to use your My Login credentials to use train.cteis.com. Step 2 is to access your student follow-up listing. You can use the CTEIS application to view the students you are responsible for surveying. First, we need to open a web browser and navigate to CTEIS.com. But in today's training, we're going to go to train.ctis.com if you want to follow along by doing the demonstrations. And I have dropped that in the chat. Again, you log into the site using your My Login username and password. After successfully logging into CTEIS, please note the links on the navigation bar. All the tools necessary for completing your follow-up reports can be found within the data entry menu. If you do not see a heading labeled follow-up, please contact your fiscal agency authorized official to make sure your account has been granted follow-up permissions. You're going to click on the follow-up link to view a list of the buildings that contain students who need to be surveyed. We're going to now go to that demonstration on train.ctis.com. So I'm going to switch from my PowerPoint slides. And now you should see the train.ctis.com on your screen. Notice that I've already logged in. We're going to head over to the data entry. And then we have follow-up permissions. So we're going to go to the follow-up tab. So this is all of the buildings that I have access to that I would need to provide survey materials for or survey responses for. So just for this demonstration, we're going to point out the features. If I click here in the box to the far left, I can highlight the building that I want to get my list from. I can then go down and click here, follow-up list report or follow-up list export. Right next to the box is a phone icon. This is the button, or this is what I want to click when I actually want to input survey data. Once I've completed my survey and I want to input data, I'm going to click the phone icon. That will then open the screen for me to enter my survey results. The next button here, CADR. This button you will use. It's an abbreviation for follow-up candidates in another district report. It is important to understand that each concentrator in the state is surveyed only once, regardless of the number of CTE programs the student attained concentrator status in. So clicking the CADR button will allow you to see a report that lists all the students from your building who will be contacted by a district agency other than yours. CTEIS itself determines which district is responsible for surveying each concentrator. Okay, so just keep that in mind. When we click that button, it will access that list. So we're going to demonstrate how to access our list. I have highlighted the building that I want to access, and I'm going to come down and click the follow-up report prototype here. And it provides a list of all of the information that I would need to conduct my follow-up report or my follow-up survey. Okay, in this report, The information that appears below the italicized top line relates to student's program, beginning with the set of parentheses. It's the zip code and the PSN, the name of the program. There should be an X in one of the parentheses to indicate the student's primary program. However, during your interviews, you may ask the student to respond to whichever program he or she chooses, regardless of if it's the primary program or not. Finally, in this report, you will see the operating building for each program and the course name. So you can use this. That's the follow-up report. The follow-up list export is a Excel document. It's an Excel document. We're going to open that. I'm going to switch my screen so that you can see it. In this follow-up list export, you will receive the same listing of students as previously, but in raw data format. This file contains the students' names, UICs, contact information, as well as the pins each student will need to log into the student self-survey portal. And I'll cover that student self-survey portal information in just a moment. As you review your student list, keep in mind that it represents only those students who attained concentrator status in at least one wage earning program and left school. Remember that some concentrators might be assigned to another building if they completed multiple programs, and you can use the CADR, which is the Candidates in Another District report button on your building listing screen to view those students. If you discover any discrepancies, including missing students or inaccurate exit statuses, please contact OCTE for assistance. Okay. And that's where those two buttons here, the follow-up list report and then the follow-up list export. The CADR, Candidates in Another District report, is here. Okay, we're going to go back to our presentation. And that was step 2, accessing your student follow-up listing. This is just an overview of reviewing the listing, as I stated. And please make note of this slide if you have any problems accessing your student reports. Step 4, conduct the survey. After accessing and reviewing your student listing, you are ready to begin interviewing your concentrators. An effective way of completing your surveys is to contact your students directly. Using mail survey forms to assist you is sometimes helpful, though the cost of materials, postage, and response time should be taken into consideration. In addition to contacting the student directly and sending out mailings, you may also ask a proxy to answer survey questions on your concentrator's behalf. However, you should seek to interview the student directly in all cases. The fourth way is to mail or email your student and ask them to complete a self-survey using the link found, and the information will be provided. The self-survey should be available by the 14th or a little bit after. They're still working on that. But once that information is available, studentfollowup.cetis.com is the link that will be used for the self-surveys. Regardless of the method you select, you're responsible to contact all your students. So if they do not respond to an email request, you must try to call them. A best practice suggestion is if you plan on conducting several interviews within a small block of time, it is often useful to prepare a blank survey form before you begin making your calls. You want to remember to make several copies of the intro script as well as your student and proxy survey forms. You may also consider putting the student's name into the intro script and then attaching the intro script to a student or proxy form when you begin your interviews, just to keep all of your information together. The next slide is information pertaining to this self-survey. If you contact your students and ask that they fill out a self-survey, the students will need a self-survey ID. This can be found by accessing the follow-up list export that we demonstrated earlier. The ID is on the Excel form. Once the student has completed the self-survey form, your follow-up list will reflect by indicating a self in the response in the grid. And I'll show you the responses a little bit later in the training, but they would need a self-survey ID. You can contact them and ask them to fill out the self-survey. And once the self-survey is completed, it will show up in your records. This next slide is information pertaining to training those who will be conducting the follow-up survey. Many districts delegate the contacting and surveying of students or teachers to teachers and surveying of students to teachers and other staff. In this case, it is your responsibility to train these interviewers in the correct protocols for conducting the follow-up survey. So whether you're conducting the surveys yourself or instructing others to conduct the surveys, please adhere to the following. While conducting your surveys, you will want to keep the guidelines set by your protocol manual in mind. Before you call your concentrators, look through your survey forms to make sure you understand how the questions flow from section to section. This will ensure that you are able to focus entirely on your conversation with your students. Some important points to remember are you want to make a good faith effort to interview every student. Proxies generally do not have the personal knowledge regarding CTE programs that concentrators do, and some questions have been omitted entirely from the proxy survey form. Do not hesitate to vary in the ways in which you attempt to contact students as well. Sometimes reaching out to students through a combination of email, social media, face-to-face meetings is more effective than phoning them. Some districts take advantage of social media to stay connected with students. That way they can contact them during the follow-up process. You want to remember to be consistent in how you ask your survey questions. Strive to maintain high standards of consistency because it is the key to interpreting what students' responses mean to the state. When reading your scripted questions, follow the wording on the survey forms exactly. Every respondent in the state must be asked the same questions in the same way to maintain consistency. Even slight deviations from your wording can subtly change the meaning of the question and lead the student to give one answer over another. This next slide is a continuation. You want to remain objective in your interviews and allow the respondents to answer naturally when prompted. You want to keep your voice even and void of emotion toward the question. Remember that apologizing or preempting a question with a comment can imply that the question is suspicious or sensitive when in fact all interviewers are authorized by the state of Michigan to ask them on the survey, and they use them as a means of gathering helpful student data. You want to follow the script as closely as you can. The survey has undergone extensive revision, meaning over the years, the information serves a purpose, which is described in your protocol manual. The instructions in the protocol manual for conducting your interviews also comes from years of experience and are intended to assist with maintaining objectivity and consistency. If you are uncertain about how to ask a specific question or why certain items appear on your survey, please contact the Survey Support Center. The last tip is after you have finished interviewing your respondent, please remember to check your work. Before hanging up, review the questions on your form, especially if you skipped some. Several questions include multiple parts, which may be overlooked during your interview. And each question must include an answer before the CTEIS application can compile the survey. If you are unsure how to code a student's response into your survey form, please again do not hesitate to contact the help desk. I'm going to go now. We have some information on our knowledge base that I feel is very helpful. So I'm going to switch my screen. So we're back at the knowledge base. We're under the data entry heading and we're down at follow-up. The information that I would like to bring your attention to is over here on the side. Of course, we have our instructional guides, the PowerPoints, some of our training videos. Recording of this video will be here shortly. There is the follow-up guides for both the fiscal agent and CPID. The self-survey guide that we have mentioned earlier, that information is there. And this is what I wanted to bring your attention to, the best practices. This information was taken from districts who did a really good job at their student surveys, and they provided information via survey of best practices that they do in collecting their information. So this will be useful to look at while you're conducting your surveys. As we stated, a lot of districts use different techniques to get the information from the students, and that information is here. Let me share my screen. So that's this information here. Okay, so that's the best practices. Please use that information as you're conducting your surveys. This next slide is just an overview of the materials in your follow-up packet, the protocol manual, the intro scripts, and the phone survey form. So in this segment of the training, we will review the standard student survey questions. During the survey, you may want to keep, when you're actually interviewing your students, you may want to keep your protocol manual on hand as it contains detailed information about the survey process, including the purpose of each question, how to code student responses, and tips for resolving common problems that might occur. Remember, before you begin your interviews, you will need copies of your intro script, which contains conversation prompts for both the students and proxies. You will also want to make sure that you have copies of both your student and proxy survey forms. So this slide here is the introductory script. This is the introductory script that you will use to begin each of your calls. And it's designed to quickly introduce the survey to the student and get them involved by asking important questions regarding their programs. Notice that you have 3 potential dialogues, which vary slightly depending on whether you're speaking to a concentrator in one program, a concentrator in multiple programs, or a proxy. If you printed your follow-up student list report previously, you may refer to it as you determine how many programs your respondents became concentrators in and in which grade. So you can use that information from the follow-up report while you're doing your introductory dialogue. So following the appropriate prompts, if the student completed a single program, you will begin your conversation with the statement, "In this grade, you achieved the concentrator status in a program in this field. Do you have a few minutes to answer some questions about what you're doing now?" All responses will be kept confidential. If the student completed multiple programs, you would open the dialogue instead with, "We are talking with students who achieved the concentrator status in more than one program in high school. Do you have a few minutes to answer some questions about what you're doing now?" All responses will be kept confidential. Our records show that you completed the first, second, and third programs. Are you pursuing one of these more than the other? If the student responds that they are focusing on one program, you can then ask which one. Fill in the appropriate blank with the student's response. You conclude the introduction by saying, "This is the program I would like you to think about during this interview." If the respondent answers that they are not pursuing any one program, you may explain that we can only follow up in one program. Which would you like to think about during this interview? It is important to record this response as you will be unable to add the student survey information into CTEIS without indicating the program that the student chose. A helpful tip that was brought up in another training session was that you may want to have both copies of your follow-up report and the follow-up export so that you can indicate the program information for the students. The program information is not indicated on the follow-up export, which would mean if you had the follow-up report, you would have both. So that's just maybe a good note to keep in mind. So at times, the bottom section, you may find yourself speaking with a parent, guardian, or close relative to the student. In these cases, the introduction is slightly altered to read, "We're talking with students who achieve the concentrator status in high school CTE programs to see how they're doing. This student was in the such and such program. How could I reach him or her?" Recall that it is important to attempt to contact a concentrator before you fall back on a proxy response. If it is apparent that the concentrator will remain unreachable throughout the duration of the follow up project, you may ask the proxy to take the survey by stating you could probably answer some of the questions. It would only take a couple minutes, and all responses will be kept confidential. The script focuses on communicating three key elements between the interviewer and the respondents: the purpose of the call, the student's program selection, and the confidentiality of any information that is shared. After completing your introductions, you will continue to the student phone survey form unless you are speaking with a proxy, in which you will use the proxy survey form, the phone survey form. So moving on to the student phone survey form, Part A relates to the current status. So Q1, let's start with what you're doing now. Are you going to school, working? So all of these answers, all of these questions have to have answers. All of the information indicated kind of leads to the next question. So, for instance, let's start with what you're doing now. Are you going to school, working? Look through the subsections A through G. You must make sure you fill in either a yes or no response for each item, including whether the student is currently in a training program or attending school or college, working as an apprentice, working or on paid leave, vacation, sick leave, active duty in the military or part time duty in the military, national and community service program, or volunteering in the Peace Corps. If the student is volunteering on an unpaid leave or of absence or seasonal layoff, hospitalized, in jail, or deceased, you need to check the appropriate box. And then if the student falls into a separate category, you may specify that on the H7 other line. Make sure you verify your survey responses with the student before continuing to the next question. Keep in mind that if a student on your list is deceased, you should skip directly to the end of the survey. This next section is Part B, and it goes over the school or training. And again, you will skip this section if the concentrators state that they are not currently pursuing further education. So, for any students who indicate they are currently involved in schooling, you would state, I have some questions about your schooling or training. In your major area of study or training, how much do you use the skills you learned in this program? A lot, some, hardly ever, or not at all. For students who answer that they use their skills hardly ever or not at all, you will ask, right now you don't use your training, but how much do you anticipate using it in the future? This is to catch any students who are currently completing general education requirements before moving into a major or minor track of study. The next question asks, where are you going to school? The student should identify a primary institution of enrollment, and you will need to categorize it as a business or trade school, a community college, a college or university, a military school, or a school in the other category. You do not need to name the school directly. The last question in section B asks, what type of program are you in? The student will need to indicate whether the track of study he or she is in at the time of the interview is considered an apprenticeship or on the job training, or if it awards a certificate, an associate's degree, or a bachelor's degree. If something else, you will need to specify using the blank space in the other section. That's number 6 under Q4. Part C is the employment section, and it relates to the student's current employment. And you will skip this section for any concentrators who indicate they are not working at the time of your interview. If so, you should open this section by stating, "Now I'd like to talk to you about your job as it relates to your selected program. On your job, how much would you say you're using the skills you were taught?" The following question relates to job satisfaction. How strongly do you agree with the statement, "I am satisfied with my present job"? Do you agree? Do you strongly agree, disagree, or strongly disagree? You want to remember not to color your respondents' answers with voice inflections or additional comments. You are seeking the student's level of job satisfaction. And again, these questions will only be asked if you're talking to the student directly. These questions will not be asked to proxies. The next question asks, how many hours a week do you work? You want to make sure that you fill in the appropriate number of hours. If the student is unsure, you can ask the student to add the hours from all jobs together if they're doing multiple. And then ask, would you say it's 35 hours a week or more? This will allow the state to determine whether the student is employed full-time. The final question in Part C asks, including tips and commissions, how much do you make an hour? Not all respondents are able to give an hourly rate, and in these circumstances, you may want to ask if they can give you a figure using a different increment. The CTEIS software will translate any weekly, monthly, or yearly pay rates into an hourly wage for you. Part D consists of one question intended only for students who are not currently working. If you did not complete Section C because the respondent does not have a job, you would then ask, are you currently looking for a job? And the answer should be coded as a yes or no. Part E, after you have completed the survey questions, you should ask the respondent, what is the best way to contact you if we need to follow up this survey? And record the response within the communication exchange box. You can thank the respondent for his or her time by stating, thank you, that's all I needed. Now, are there any comments you would like to help us improve our program? And that's part F. So these are the survey forms. All of this information, again, is located on our knowledge base. We're going to move into now some potential problems that you may come in contact with. One potential problem may be an interviewer is uncomfortable asking about a student's wages and alters the question slightly to make him or herself feel better about asking it. There's a solution in the slides provided. You want to be confident you have written permission and are authorized to ask these questions. Do not remind students that they may choose to skip questions. That may imply that the subject matter is sensitive or you're not expecting an answer from them. Remember that this is simply a question. Remain casual. Your students will be less likely to hesitate and you will stay objective. There are some other examples of things that you may run into. And again, these slides are on the knowledge base if you want to run through these other potential problems. I'm going to now talk about the improving response rates. As we stated earlier in our material, you want to make sure that you're doing the best that you can to improve your response rates. You want to know that the state tracks the number of surveys your fiscal agency successfully completes. Any students who are marked as non-contacts can lower the final response rate of your district. In general, the state looks at the response rates of anywhere between 90 and 100%. So, should you fall below a 50% response rate, your fiscal agency will become non-compliant with the state standards, and you may risk recapture of CTE program funds. We've provided some ideas for keeping response rates high. Some of those examples were follow-up calls before they leave school, possibly asking concentrators for 3 to 4 contact names, phone numbers, email addresses prior to their leaving school. You could do those either through an exit survey or some other method. You want to keep in mind that while telephone surveys have very high response rates, you can also send out the mailings to concentrators to increase awareness of the follow-up project and direct them to the self-survey. Okay, did I say something wrong? Okay. You want to make sure the question is it 50 or 80%? We're going to stick to those PowerPoint slides and 80%. And also that information is also in the OCTE slides. I believe she said 80% as well. So just make sure you make those notes. I do apologize for the confusion in that. Okay, so again, while telephone surveys have very high response rates, you can also send out mailings to your concentrators and ask them to fill out this student self-survey. And again, that information will be available shortly. According to the Telephone Protection Act, phone solicitors may not call households earlier than 8 a.m. or later than 9 p.m. So while this doesn't prohibit schools from conducting surveys outside this range of hours, you will likely have the best luck if you adhere to the 8 a.m., 9 p.m. guidance. You want to make at least 6 attempts to reach students at different times of the day and on different days of the week. Try to find a rhythm that suits your schedule and your student schedules the best. Try making calls from a school phone to help screening with caller ID, just so they will identify you. Parents and students are more likely to answer a call if they are aware that it's related to school business. And again, in the protocol manual is the information to help improve response rates. You want to make sure that you take note of that. And that protocol manual, if you don't have it, is on our knowledge base at support.cteis.com. Okay, we're on to step 5, and that's entering in the survey data into CTEIS. We had shown earlier how to use the train.ctis.com. We will now be using that again. So if you want to follow along by going to train.ctis.com, you can do so now. As I switch my screen over, I'm going to demonstrate how to enter your survey data once you have collected all of your survey responses and you want to enter it into the CTEIS application. Okay, I'll just go back to the home screen. Again, we are already logged in to our demo site. Just to let you know, this training site may be a little bit different in some of the colors used because this is just a demo for training. The actual CTEIS application may have just a slight color in some of the headings and colors. So just keep that in mind. So data entry, and we're going to go under the follow-up column and we're going to select the follow-up. And this is all of the billings and fiscal agencies I have access to. And we're going to select one by clicking the box here. Again, if I want to generate the list, I can generate my list by then clicking the follow-up list report button. Or if I want to use the export button and get an Excel document, I can do that here. But now we're going to input our data. So I'm actually going to click the phone icon now. And it lists that I have 15 students that I can enter in information for the survey. So as you see in the column over here, all of these students here, it says review, and it also says under the status column, COMP. Okay, so COMP is completed. So if we scroll down, we see that we have 2 down here, which is INIT, which means that these students still need to their document, I'm sorry, data still needs to be entered in for these students. And the so I'm going to go down here and I'm going to click, as you can see, one says review and one says survey. I'm going to click here and it opens up the update student contact. I can change or enter in information if the student or the concentrator gave me additional phone information or updated email. I can then type in information here in this field if I need to. If I was unable to get a response, I can indicate so by clicking one of the options here from the drop-down list for a non-contact reason. It states the student's name, UIC, and again, the status is INIT initial, meaning that the student needs information entered. So if I had information, I would enter it in and click save, but we're going to begin the survey. So clicking the begin survey button prompts the new screen. As stated, once we figure out what program the student will or has answered questions for, I'm going to select the program. Again, for this training site, it's just an example. We're going to select the survey type. I spoke to a student. And then I would use my survey forms to enter in all of the information that I obtained from the student. And as you can see, for instance, if I click um, in a training program or attending school or college, the section of school and training pops up down here for entering in that information. If I was to select no, then it automatically prompts no school or training indicated. Same for if my student was working, that information will then open up, and it will change if you select on full-time duty. So CTEIS prompts you for the next section dependent upon your answers. So part B, I would then answer the questions that the student gave me. Part C is employment information because I indicated earlier that the student was employed. This would be the section that you would enter if the student had specific hours a week. So my training site has already prompted me. I've used 20 before, so I'm going to use that again for this demonstration. If not specific and you want to pick the 35 hours or more a week, you can indicate by yes or no here. This one here is how much they would make. So we're going to select hour. Again, if you select any of the others, you can put it in and CTEIS will adjust that for you. Well, we'll do this. If there's, okay, so this was a phone survey, the date, and then if I have any additional information, I can enter it into these fields. All of that is optional, but it is available. And then that last communication exchange section, the best way to contact if follow-up is needed, I can enter in that information there. I would then complete the survey. And as you can see, it gives me two options here. So I can review the survey to make sure that I entered my selections incorrectly, or I can redo the survey. If I choose to redo the survey, it will clear all of the responses that I have put in previously. So I would have to redo the survey again. So it's a good note to keep your paper copies of your survey handy so that you will have those responses on paper rather than entering them in as you talk to the student on the phone. You may lose those responses if you miss something and have to go back. So I'm fine with my responses. As you can see, the status has changed to complete. I can then save, and I get a success message from CTEIS. I can then close, and it prompts me back to my list. And as we can see, that one is done. We'll do one more. So all of the information is good here. We're going to begin survey. Okay, so again, you would select your program, select your type. Let's say, for instance, if I did a proxy, as we can see, the information has changed. So then I would enter in my proxy responses. And if you enter in all no's, you will get another section that pops up to enter in the information as it applies. Okay. And see, this is letting me know that that information is not looking right. Again, this information is optional. Last one is the communication exchange, but I'm going to go ahead and complete my survey. And again, the status is now complete. I can review or redo, but we're going to go ahead and save, and then we're going to close. So now it indicates that I have completed all of the 15 surveys that I need for this list here. So I'm going to exit out. Okay, and then we're going to move to our next section, which is completing the report. So in this same, under data entry, we're going, instead of going to follow up, we're going to building follow-up review, because now we've done all of the responses that we need to enter. And just for example, if this was my permissions, I would need to enter in all of the survey information for all of these. Okay. So I, for instance, have finished the one for this training demonstration, and I have all 15 responses in. So I'm going to go to data entry, and I'm going to go to follow-up review. I'm going to select the district. And as you see, under this district, there are 3 buildings that need to be validated. So you'll see the buildings that you have been assigned as a reporter, a building reporter. The follow-up list of student data is managed building by building. By selecting the view button for a specific building, you can see how many students you have in each program, in each building, and their follow-up status. So just to recap, INIT indicates that the student has not been followed up with in this survey process. COMP indicates completed. SELF is a completed self-survey. And COMPNC is a survey that will not be completed due to the inability to contact the student. So let's click on this view of the one that I just did. And as you can see, the PSN, the program name comes up. There's the INIT, the COMP, the self. I have 15 completed, none that I need to do. There were no self surveys and no completed non-contact. So this shows the total number, my percentage. I had 3 proxy surveys, and then my proxy percentage. Once all students have been contacted, you can mark your building complete. This will notify your fiscal agency level 5 that the follow-up has been completed for that building. You should also please attempt to contact your fiscal agent as well directly to let them know that you have submitted your data. So CTEIS will try to contact your fiscal agent, but you should also send a email directly to let them know that you have completed your data or you've submitted your data. So as you can see for this district, Kingsford High School, I can hit the complete button. And now there is a building status of an X. That means that that building is locked out. I can no longer make any additional changes. If additional changes are needed, I would have to seek out permissions. Okay. But now that information is going to the fiscal status. So it gets transferred to fiscal. And then once the fiscal reviews it and they have the same screen when they come in and they would mark their building complete, it would then transfer and submit. It would then transfer to the CPIT status. And again, the fiscal agent and CPIT administrator training guides for submission for follow-up processes are available on our knowledge base. But all of the submission processes work the same. If you did it for your fall data entry, then it works the same way. It's pretty much the same for submission. So at this point, I have done everything that I needed to do as a building reporter. I'm going to go back to my slides here. So we've entered in our survey data and we have completed the report. Just to demonstrate, I want to show we're going to go back to our knowledge base and I'm sorry, to our train.ctis site. And I would like to show my report now. We're going to do the follow-up list export. Okay, so right over here, this is our follow-up list export for that Kingsford High School building that I just did the information. Again, this is the raw data for all of the students. But if you can see here under the survey column, I have all of those completed. And if they were not completed, the appropriate code would be here. If it was a self survey, it would indicate self here. Let's pick another district to show the example. And as you can see in the survey column here, all of these surveys need to be completed. So that information is available, and it does reflect once you put the information into CTEIS. Okay, so we have completed our report. Again, the step 7 is the fiscal agency review and CPIT submit. If you're a fiscal agency authorized official or a CPIT administrator, the submission process is about the same as your fall data entry, as I stated. Directions on completing your building can be found on the CTEIS knowledge base, support.ctis.com. Once all of your information is in, again, those reports will be generated in the spring. They will be available in the spring. CTEIS use the information that you put in from your students to generate the reports. The XO 610, the XO 611, and the T1608. All of these are reflective of the follow-up survey responses. It does show that these reports can be found at CTEIS.com under reports, reports.ctis.com, and analytics.ctis.com. I'm going to demonstrate where that is in just a moment. So this is reports.ctis.com. And if you look over on the side here, if we go under CTE follow-up surveys, you can view that survey material or survey data. And it gives the report instructions on how to generate the report once this report is available. Again, that's in the spring of the next year. So once all of the information have been completed and submitted by that January date that we stated, then that information is available in the spring. So then I can go down and select how I would like to run the report, at what level, and I can get the information for the follow-up reports if I want to review that data. This next slide is just a timeline overview. Again, this is in your follow-up packet. Just lets you know that this process takes place, the life cycle of the project is, and behind the scenes, it takes place all year. So please pay close attention to the timeline. We see that through September through January, and then February through July. All of this information, again, is available in your packet. So just please pay close attention to the timelines and due dates. So the very last thing that I want to bring back to your attention, again, although we've done the phone survey, we've talked about the mail survey, the student self-survey, that information will be available shortly. Information will be sent out when that's available. The link and information will be also shared when that information is available, so that you can transfer that information to your students to complete self-surveys. So just be on the lookout for that. So this concludes our training session for our follow-up. If you have any questions, I will remain online for a while to answer if you have any questions. If you excuse me, if you have to leave, we do have a evaluation form that we have at the end of every training. If you can fill that out, we would really appreciate your input about our training and how we're doing. Thank you, Diana. That link is in the chat Diana has provided it for us. So if you have to leave before the end of this training, you can click the link and fill out the survey. If you want to remain on, when I end the survey automatically pops up. So it's up to you. But I like to thank each and every one of you for attending the training, and would like to say that you will tell you to have a good, I can talk. Have a great rest of your day as we're concluding this training session. Again, if you have any questions, we'll remain on. All of the information is on the knowledge base. And we're into the follow-up session. So we thank you all for your time and attention. So if we don't have any questions, we're going to go ahead and end the training now. So again, thank you all for attending. Thank you. And when we close, again, that evaluation will pop up for you to fill out, and we would really appreciate if you would share your responses. Thank you again. Have a great rest of your Thursday.